Hello, and thanks very much. And it's really a great pleasure to present after Dr. Nelly, since our topics are quite connected. So in my paper, which is part of my current PhD project, I'm looking at the historical simulacrum, as I defined it, of the Minsk Upper Town Regeneration Project, initiated in 2004 by the President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, or in fact called by him or defined by him in the presidential decree as a focal point of Belarusian cultural and urban renewal. So I'll try and keep my presentation very short because it's sort of work in progress, and unlike Nelly, I have a lot more visuals and probably a lot less words, so we'll have a balance there, I suppose. But what I would like to say is that this vast regeneration project, which started really in 2002 with the rebuilding of the town hall building, which was long lost. In fact, it was demolished in the 19th century, really sort of signified that sort of move towards history in the urban context of the Belarusian capital. I'm also looking at public art, which is in fact my focus, and how it is conceived in unity with the built environment, with the urban environment of Belarusian capital, and how it helps to reinforce the idea of historicity of Minsk, of this sort of historicized landscape. I'm also trying to argue with my papers that with this regeneration project, arguably since the time Belarus declared its independence, it's the first time on the part of the authority to regenerate the nation as historical and European. I'm looking at a different thing. And again, quoting Baudrillard, I'm saying that when the real is no longer what it used to be, nostalgia assumes its full meaning. So one of the stratagems, I argue, used in the overall regeneration project is the appeal to nostalgia. So this idea of unspecified, vacuum-cleaned history, which is not really specific, but definitely remote and definitely unique to that particular nation, in this case it's Belarus. However, I'll look at some of the strategies used in the rebuilding of the Upper Town, which is the quarter of the historical center of Minsk, which is the heartland, sort of the very center of the historical center of Minsk, and how certain regeneration practices used there are quite similar, or in fact identical, to the Soviet practice of rebuilding Minsk after the Second World War. So history does not only repeat itself, history sort of replicates here. Again, sorry, I'll keep on using my laptop instead. Right, so the idea of Minsk being a tabula rasa was a very popular idea, in fact, something inculcated in through media, films, ideology, and mass education. And in fact, it became such a given fact that for me, growing up in Belarus, it was clear that Minsk was badly bombed and demolished in the war, and there was nothing surviving there. While the degree of demolition was indeed high, the fact that a lot of the Minsk urban structure still survived after the war was not really spoken about for quite a long time. And as you can see, one of the photographs there show the very old town, or the Upper Town quarter, which is currently being rebuilt or reconstructed, with several structures actually surviving there. The shot on the right is the ruins of the St. Thomas Aquinas Cathedral, which, although badly damaged, still survived. However, this idea of tabula rasa and starting afresh was very popular amongst the architects in the 1950s, as I already mentioned. And what they were doing, in fact, by rebuilding Minsk as an ideal, I argue, socialist city, and as Nelly showed, the main avenue, the main prospect, because the idea of a big, large street was 8 rows of cars. The prospect, which was popularized through the Soviet cities, was built. So this new ideal Soviet city was actually being constructed on the ruins. In fact, what was being done at that time was not really novel, or the idea of the 1950s. 1950s. It was really a realization of 1937 General Plan of Minsk, which defined all pre-revolutionary bourgeois architecture as historically insignificant and architecture that should be demolished. So the architects of the new capital saw the demolition or the bombing as a blessing in disguise and an idea and an opportunity to start afresh. So one of the things which happening on the photo is the remaining church or remaining cathedral of Saint Virgin Mary being rebuilt to house Spartak Sports Society building, and that's how the building was changed, transformed, and survived until the collapse of the Soviet Union, only to be later rebuilt back into the Catholic cathedral again. Right, so let me see. As I already mentioned, the decree of 2004 defined Minsk, or the regeneration of Minsk historic quarter, as important to construction of national identity and patriotic renewal of the Belarus capital. And here is a plan, the general plan of the Minsk Historic Center, with all the key areas as published in 2013. I don't know if I can sort of step here, but the upper town quarter could be quite sort of visible around the green area there. So that's the area of town I'll be focusing most in my presentation. It is interesting that what I'm looking at is the proliferation or increase of commissioning of public art in this particular part of town, which started really with 2007 with installation of the sculpture, The Carriage, an empty carriage, which was installed in front of the Simulacrum of Town Hall. I do not have enough time to talk about why I define this structure as a simulacrum, and just enough mentioning that according to Jean Bourdieu, the simulacrum is a copy without an original, and so in fact is the Minsk Town Hall, although it did have a prototype. The way it has been rebuilt, the way it has been constructed, had no real connection to the historical building which existed there until 1851. Although I do not have enough time to talk about it. So all the new public art which punctuates the newly rebuilt or historical centre of Minsk is this sort of rather naive and cute and engaging public art. So the public art which is really quite different from the type we are used to in the Soviet cities. So all the Lenin and Stalin's monuments with pedestals, and which do not quite allow the same sort of interaction as these public works do. So the carriage, as you can see, it's open, it's accessible, and people in fact do it. So a lot of the time you'll see a lot of children playing with it, a lot of people sitting there. So what I argue this public art does indeed is infantilizing the public space. Again, I do not have enough time to talk about it, unfortunately, but it's one of the strategies used on the overall public art commissioning in that part of Minsk. Right. So the new beginnings in new public art. So public art doesn't really commemorate any actual historic events, which is a very important aspect. Although labelled as historical, public art sort of looks at abstract ideas of history rather than actually looking at the concrete facts and concrete personalities. I mean, the only difference is, or the only exception would be the current Stanislav Maniushka and Dunin Marcinkiewicz, the two prominent artistic figures in the 19th century. The monument that has been recently erected in the Upper Town quarter. However, this monument is the exception. All the other ones really look at the idea of generalized history rather than concrete history. So this one in particular is the commission of the Orthodox Church, and this one celebrates the obtention of the icon of Mary, the sort of symbol of Minsk, in a rather naive and sort of playful way. Particularly the combination of golden script and a Comic Sans typeface there on the pedestal is rather macabre and bizarre, but I argue that it actually is in line with the whole historic regeneration of the Minsk upper town and the Minsk Historic Centre in general. One of the monuments I would like to focus on in particular is La Pyramide de Minsk, which I define it a similar structure to the celebrated Louvre structure, although not quite the same functionality. It doesn't try to ease access of masses of tourists into the newly established town hall building. This structure is quite humble and sort of absurd. However, what I argue, it actually is a very perhaps unwittingly, but this sculpture really eradicates history to the point of non-existence. So the monument installed and commissioned by the general developer of the historic quarter of Minsk was installed here, and on their website you can read that previously the the place of the sculpture was occupied by the bust to the Tsar Alexander II, the Liberator, which unfortunately has been lost in revolution. So far it's true, however, historically it's slightly inaccurate. If we look at the commemorative gesture -2, indeed that monument stood there, and this photograph was taken around early 900s, there's no precise date. In fact, there's a monument, the bust to the Tsar, which was of course removed later on. Of course it did not stand in front of the town hall, which by then was long gone, about 50 years or so. However, it was there. But this interesting idea was what I look at here. Sorry, I'll actually refresh my mind. So I'm looking, with this monument, I'm looking at the idea of demolition and building or erecting a new monument precisely on the place of the older monument. And I think that this helps to create a new commemorative gesture which combines vandalism, so removal of the old monument, and veneration of a new hero or a new symbol. So this place has been actually vastly populated by monuments throughout the 20th century, which the Minsk city centre developer refuses to acknowledge on their website. So what we have here, one of the monuments which stood there before, is 1936 athlete fountain, sort of rather socialist, realist sculpture of bow and arrow shooting person. It's not the only monument which stood there in the place of a Tsar monument. There were a few other erected every now and then, particularly if you know was Lenin's claim that monumental propaganda is one of the most powerful tools of ideology. A lot of monuments were installed. However, ironically, although they were meant to celebrate some sort of ahistoric and sort of atemporal things such as the Communist Party, because of the fact that the materials used in producing these monuments, they were mainly made of plaster. They didn't survive longer than a year. So that sort of irony was happening there. So if we look back at this sculpture here, this this allegoric reference to the pyramid of Louvre and also to the pyramids in Egypt, it's sort of an idea of thanks very much. So 2 minutes. So it's sort of idea of defining the time and the fact that with this structure you can't really tell whether anything existed here before. So if rather unwittingly this monument really does help to sort of dehistoricize the place completely. Also interestingly, there's no mentioning of any other monuments apart from the website mentioning, as I already told. Okay, since I only have 2 minutes, I don't have enough time to really go any further, and I apologize if my thoughts were scattered. One of the things I'm looking at with the Historic Centre development is the simulated landscapes of consumption. So the idea behind the regeneration of Minsk Old City is not just the patriotic renewal, also officially it is done to develop tourist industry, and therefore there are a lot of marketing around tourism, a lot of new campaigns, and the recent visa waiver for European citizens and other citizens to Belarus can probably suggest that there's a sort of touristic idea behind redevelopment of the Minsk historic city centre. However, it is quite doubtful that the visitors from Europe would be particularly attracted to the simulated landscapes of the Baroque and Renaissance architecture that is currently being populated. That the historic centre is currently being populated with. However, this particular development example I wanted to look at is, as I argue, direct learning from Disney. The Nyamiga 3 shopping mall, which was built and completed in 2012, with demolition of actually existing historic buildings, presents some sort of ahistoric, yet some sort of nostalgic idea of an old town. I mean, apart from the bizarre, bottom level of glass and concrete, it has this sort of, gingerbread houses, with different facades, which in fact conceal interconnected massive retail space, just like the Main Street USA in the Disney park. So this several strategies used in Disneyland sort of use history to achieve some sort of commercial goals have been used in other redevelopments across Europe and the States, in fact. So I think that could be arguably a direct learning from Disney. And finally, just to sort of wrap up, I wanted to suggest that the new historicised development of Minsk really repeats the history by, again, rebuilding and eradicating the historical structures and historical development of the city of Minsk. So if we look at the Nyamiga 3 shopping mall here and the St. Mary Cathedral there, obscured by later after it's been developed, I think that might be a sort of rather nice visual proof to my argument. Thanks very much for your attention. Thank you.